Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. And I'm not a very formal talker, so this is informal. And the idea is that I will speak. I'm also not a very long speaker, I think. So if you want to talk a bit, have questions, have comments, in talking about Reverend Master, I'll have to talk about myself. Not to put myself down or embarrass myself, but, I was taught by her, and if you're a student, part of the thing is you're trying to learn, and part of the process is learning as you make mistakes, and you learn. Okay, so I'll start by saying a little bit about how I met Reverend Master Jiyu-Kennett. I was going to the University of Santa Clara, down in the Bay Area. I cannot pin down whether it was 70 or 71 when I first met her, but it was one of those 2 years. I was taking a world religions class. This is a Jesuit university, but they had a world religions class, actually very open theology department. And somehow the teacher, who was a Jesuit at that time, found out about Reverend Master. I think it's possibly because she was teaching in Berkeley also, at UC Berkeley, and asked her to come down and speak at the time in the world religions class where we were reviewing Buddhism. Okay, I found Buddhism a complete mystery. I was much more interested in Hinduism at that point in time. Complete mystery. But she comes, she speaks. Honestly, I could not understand what she was saying. Reflecting back, I was in a pretty big fog. It was 1970, 71 in the Bay Area. We all know what was happening. And no, I wasn't. I was straight, at the class. I wasn't. But there was something about her. She took great patience and compassion in answering questions. And I think there were a number of other people in the class besides me who didn't understand. And so she would try, this way and that way. She just wasn't like, this is it, boom. She really tried. And it left this impression on me because I was raised in San Francisco, near the Haight-Ashbury. I had seen a lot of people who apparently in a very short time became authorities on various fields and endeavors. I kind of heard him talk, and I thought, well, how long have they been doing this? But this was somebody who'd, gone to the Far East, spent a bit of time there, and yet was so patient, humble, and compassionate in the way that she talked. Okay, then I don't know, was it 3 months, 6 months, a year passed? I can't quite pin it down. But she was to come again to that same class, which I had already taken, so I didn't need to retake it. But the teacher was a good friend of mine, and was actually really trying to help me. And so he let me know that she was coming again. So I went again, And actually, I think by that time I was sincerely interested in Buddhism. Okay, went to the class, and then they invited me to lunch with them in the faculty club. Okay. I had hair down, down to here, and I was wearing overalls, and here I am walking in with Reverend Master and another one of the monks dressed in robes, and with this Jesuit priest into the faculty club. It was very interesting, and I don't remember much about the meal, other than I tried my best not to, do something that was really, dropping my silverware and all that. But we had the meal, and we left, went outside, and she looked at me and she said, "Please come visit us." And I felt like she was actually really talking to me. So I did, very shortly after. 6 months later or so, I went up for a period of time. I think it was during December I came up here. And I don't know that she was actually here then. She may have been, but the monks were in retreat. I had had a football injury on my knee about 1.5 years before, so sitting cross-legged for more than 5 minutes was a real challenge. But again, this was deep impression upon me. Okay. And with that coming to a retreat, or coming up here for a week, that I was kind of really drawn into the practice. And just over a year later, I came here, pretty much to stay. Okay, sorry. Although I was impressed by Reverend Master, my initial draw to Shasta Abbey was about the life of a monastic. I only sampled it a little bit, but there was something about it. It just, within a week, I could feel something. And then although I found that first week and subsequent retreats that I came to hard, and the time would just pass really slowly, but there was something about the life, that really resonated with me. So I was to come back. But my draw really wasn't Reverend Master as a person. Okay? We were really different people, as all of us actually are in this room, really different people. She was an older generation than myself. She was a music scholar, and she was a Brit. And here I am. I'm a hippie, ex-jock, probably really quite macho, and not very cultured. I had a good education, but I wasn't really extremely cultured. So, interestingly, when I was a novice monk, occasionally, let me say this, go back and say this. Reverend Master was the one that you ordained with in those days. She was the abbess. She was the senior monk. I'm totally glad that that's the way that it worked out. Okay. Now we have choices because her disciples have grown, and you can choose a bit more. But I'm glad it worked out the way it worked. But my draw wasn't to her as a person. I thought she was a really good teacher and she had something, but just at that point in time saw, well, we're really different people here. And she'd make some little jabs about, we'd watch TV and we'd see a football advertisement or baseball, and she'd talk about people running around in their pajamas and I actually had long left sports by then. So, but there was this kind of it kind of pinged with me, and she had a way to do that in a playful way, humorous way sometimes. Actually, she looked at me straight in the face one day. There was nobody else around. She said, "Actually, I don't mind sports." So okay, that was good. Okay. All right, where am I going to go from here? Right. When I was a novice monk, occasionally one of the more senior monks would come to me and point out the fact from Reverend Master that I wasn't shaving my face every day. I just didn't have any sense of that then. But we do, as monks, we try to stay face cleanly shaven most of the time. Okay. And also in those days, this is what Reverend Master Mann was alluding to yesterday, things were tighter. Reverend Master had come from a Japanese tradition. She was trained in that. She's also a Brit, and that's, there was a class society there. America's a little different, not radically different, but okay. So things in those days were more that, the novices should be seen but not heard. And that was okay. It was good training. She and we evolved, I feel, over time. And we're still evolving. Well, then because of some circumstances, by the time I'd been a monk 2 years, I became head cook of the monastery. I was really I had this real responsibility. And quite honestly, I loved to eat, but my knowledge of cooking was not vast, other than I loved to eat. And I was curious, what made so. But she gave me that opportunity, and I was to stay there pretty much for 22 years. Now, I did do some other things. I worked in the goat department. I worked building, because I had some skills there, when we do building projects. So I'd get a break. But she kind of left me there to, I think in some ways, she liked the job I did, but also just to kind of burn it out, because that's kind of what I did up to that point in time. I would just take something and just engage myself fully and just burn it out after a while. In reflection, I look upon it as an honor to have done that, because it is a great honor in our tradition. I think any monastic position is. Anything is. To be a human being is a great honor. And what we do with our lives can be a great honor. So I will say that I learned a lot from her during that time as the head cook, because I was still the head cook when she died in 1996. And I learned a lot from her about cooking, and I learned a lot about being a human being, and I learned a lot about my life as a monk. As Reverend Master Mayon was saying yesterday, she was both compassionate and she was tough. She was those things with me. I found that if something happened, as things do, we were all young, the monastery was young, sometimes you make a mistake, and I could create a barrier between her and myself, because she offered me some teaching after the mistake. Maybe that's not the way I'd like to have the teaching come, but I could create a barrier there. I also found, having held on to things, that I could let go of them. It was actually as simple as that. I could let go of them. And the block was gone. Now, I don't think she was a mind reader. I don't think she did that. But I think she knew when you were holding on. And I don't know it's as though she didn't help us in that, because I think she did. But sometimes she just left us alone until we let go of it, and it was gone. Okay, let me go back a little bit about Reverend Master Jiyu. At one of the first retreats that I attended here as a lay trainee, the monastery was very small at that time, so this is probably about 1972 or 3. Okay, and the monastery was very small, so you'd have a retreat, and you would have tea with her and the rest of the monks in what now is the exercise room down in the Sangha house. A very small room, because there weren't a lot of people. So during that tea, one of the monks said something, and it actually struck me as kind of funny. And she responded to the person, very direct, wasn't sharp, but very direct. Okay, and then she let go of it. And a couple minutes later, she was talking with that same person in the circle and smiling. And I had never really seen this before. As an athlete, you get psychologically intimidated, and it just go on and sometimes, I had some really good coaches too, I must say. But just the way that she did this was something that was really kind of an awakening to me. I thought, wow, that's impressive, that you can be direct with someone, say what you need to say, let it go, and then move on. And with that same person, not hold a grudge, just move on. Okay, to kind of go on to something else here. When I was a novice monk, she often lectured to us. And her health was better than was later on. So she was able to lecture to us quite frequently. And one day, we must have been looking at Zen as Eternal Life. Actually, in those days, it was called Selling Water by the River. But I had my book with me, and there was something that she said, and I wrote it right in the first page of the book. Okay, that's like almost 40 years ago. And it stuck with me. So I went back, and I tried to find out where it was, because I couldn't quite remember where it was. But it was in that first page of Selling Water by the River. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I'm dyslexic. And someone will say something, and between them saying it, me writing it down, and also 40 years, what I wrote down may have not been actually what she said, but there was something in it. And actually, you'll hear it when I read it, because it doesn't totally make sense as a sentence. But there's a thought there. Okay, so what she appears to have said is, work is a creativity which lends towards self-discipline inside of oneself. So life should have a meaning. Okay. As I told you, I was an athlete, so I had a very physical life up to coming in the monastery. And I think I had a very physical life here. And I saw with that sentence that it's as though I was given license to be who I was. And it was okay. It was okay to be physical, to engage the world with whatever you did, and you didn't have to, go into this certain mold and be this certain kind of saintly monk. You could be who you were, and of course, who we are. I mean, that's not something that's static. That's changing, hopefully improving, and it'll be different at different stages of our life. So, Reverend Master Jiyu did not look down upon work and activity. She felt that done properly, that's in proper balance, activity gave dignity and meaning to our lives. What we did, because you just can't just sit there all the time. I mean, that would be dukkha if we just sat there all the time. Okay, so we need to do things with our lives, and she saw those things as things that dignified our life. She talked about sanctifying the mundane, that the small things of our life. The first thing you used to learn here was to straighten your shoes when you put them down. And as far as I'm concerned, that's both common sense and simple, but it's utterly profound. Because if you can start with getting something straight, it carries into just many avenues of one's life. And she had incredible respect for things and people. She would sometimes be given something by someone, a little present, and for hours she had to sit a lot because of her health, but she'd have it in her hand, and she'd look at it, and move it around, and she'd put it down, pick it up. And she had a way of studying things, the simplest thing, and seeing something there that we couldn't necessarily see. Okay. As Reverend Master Mayon was saying yesterday, Reverend Master was a complex person. Okay? Well, we all are, really. I mean, we're you get what you get, and we got all kinds of dimensions to us. Some that we don't even see for a while, but Reverend Master was both a perfectionist, and she was a non-fusser. Interesting combination. Okay? When we were doing building projects, she would come out a lot of the time and just be with us, and also to point out safety issues, like something's going to fall on somebody's head pretty soon if you don't do something or other. She had a real eye for that. And actually, probably as many of you know, her father was a professional tailor, so she had a real way. People that can do things with cloth can actually that can kind of go over into building things. They can see the sense of putting things together. Boards don't stretch, obviously, but there's a similarity, and she could carry that over. But sometimes in the building projects, we would get bogged down in details. And she wouldn't let us, She'd just kind of, we got to move on, I think part of it was because in building the monastery, there was more than just the physical building. It was the training, the form of the training that we needed to do. And so if we were too far off into something here, she would kind of push us over here. And so some ways we never finished things, at least not to our satisfaction. But it's the same way now. I see we get one thing sort of done, and then there's another emergency, and we respond to that. And that's okay, she'd like things to be done nicely, but not the fuss. We had a heck of a time always getting all the coats of sheetrocking mud on a wall that you usually do. And she'd just paint it, she'd say. Just paint it. Yes, it's okay. There was this other interesting thing that would happen. We'd have these marathon recording sessions, often for morning service or some part of our liturgy, so that we could have them on tape and they'd be available for others. We had the Buddhist supplies that we were running at that time. So we'd have these marathon taping sessions, and they'd usually be after some intense week of something, so everybody was tired. And I think a lot of times she had to go somewhere at the end of the recording session. She had to head to the Bay Area or something. So it was this interesting, pressures. And, I don't sing very well. I try to make a joyful noise to the Lord and do my best and, listen to other people, but it's not quite my thing. But oftentimes during those sessions, I would listen to it, and it didn't sound good to my ear. And I may have just been tired, but it didn't. There was something discordant or not quite right. But she'd always say, after we finished, "Great job." Now here's someone who was a professional musician. She was an organist, church organist. She was also a music scholar. And she had this patience with people. I gather as a teacher, she taught at a boys' school. And one of the things that really she didn't like was that before her, the young men had been actually discouraged in music because their voices were changing, and she wouldn't have that. She felt that they could learn to sing, but she's again, this is someone who has a real skill and yet has a patience. That you don't see that often with people. Sometimes people just have a skill and they just kind of fly with it, and they're very creative. But she could bring it into working with that with other people. Oh, yeah. And interesting with her, you could not pin her down. From the beginning when I knew her, she had poor health, poor sleep. Okay? And that meant that she couldn't always be with us in the morning for meditation. She just physically could not do that. Okay? But if you thought, "Oh, I'm really tired too, I'm not going to come to meditation this morning," Reverend Master probably won't be there. She'd be there. Yeah, she was there, And you'd hear about it quietly after. Where was so-and-so, sometimes there was a reason, but okay. And I know she personally did not, that was one of her sorrows, that she couldn't be in that hall with monks. She'd often say, I really shouldn't be the abbess here. I can't be in there. But quite frankly, I'm glad she did what she did to live as long as she lived. Okay. One of the Buddhist teachings that she emphasized that still rings very clear with me like that bell over there, is the fact of stillness and activity and stillness. Okay? So in some ways that relates to that thing that I wrote down that she probably said in some way, but I think you can see how they connect. And you first see this teaching in Selling Water by the River in the chapter about Samantabhadra. In there it says Fugen. And I think she really exemplified that. Stillness and activity and stillness. And although she had physical difficulties, restraints, she actually was a very active person. Okay? She used to say that there are different ways that you can approach Buddhist practice. Some people do it through meditation. Some do it through the study of the Dharma. Some do it through good works, activity. And some do it through devotional practice. I think, most of us are a combination thereof, but we tend to specialize beyond that, specialize in something that resonates with who we are. Okay? And I think that Master Man was talking about the flavor of our practice on Sunday night, that the flavor of our practice has that it's through works, it's through activity. It's a big expression of our practice. I think the thing I'd like to highlight, though, is the way that she talked about active practice, good works, was to do them in a contemplative way. Okay? It's a little bit different form of engaged Buddhism. Okay? I think it's engaged in your life. Not that engaged Buddhism is not engaged in your life, but her type of engaged Buddhism, if you will, was in your life. Okay. And to engage oneself fully in everyday life. Because she, I may have said this earlier, but she really was the Dogen's statement of everyday life and enlightenment are one and the same thing. I really saw that in her. And to get one's hands dirty, she thought was holy work. It wasn't dirty work, it was holy work. She called maintenance and building the extern sacristan, to make that point. That it was the same kind of work as one does in the Buddha hall. It's just the outside Buddha hall. Okay? And we built the monastery from scratch with a lot of hard work. We're still building it. I gather that's the way, if monasteries continue, that's the way they are. That you're always building. There's the obvious thing of things are decaying, but that's the way it is. You're always building. Okay. I already said that one. Oh yeah. So she had this very active side, but it was to do it through meditation, to practice meditation in your activity, to carry that meditation off the cushion out into your everyday life. And interestingly, she had a bumper sticker, and I don't know if she made this or got it somewhere, but it said, "Don't just do something, sit there." Okay, so she, the flip side was there, where it wasn't just about doing things; it was doing what was appropriate to the time. And that changes, and she would change with that. When I was the cook, she would ride up to the kitchen. This is in the years when she could no longer walk. She'd ride up to the kitchen in her little rascal, one of these motorized vehicles. Okay? And she'd often come up close to lunchtime, half hour before lunch. That's an interesting time, in the kitchen. I don't think she came out to kind of check us out or throw something else into the pot and make it difficult. I think it was the time of day when she had strength. When she had strength, she would come out, she'd offer teaching, she'd be with us. And also it was a good time to see the monks, because when there's food in the kitchen, the monks are in there. So I had this interesting situation where I knew that it was important to pay attention to her when she came, okay? But I also had to get the meal out. And she talked about how if you're practicing meditation properly, when you bring it out into your life, it's a bit of a juggling act. I don't think it's multitasking, because I have a little difficulty with which you can actually do more than one thing at a time, although you can do many things consecutively. Okay? But anyway, I learned to juggle, and I'm really grateful for that, because she wasn't expecting that because she came up there, then the meal would be out late. The schedule went on, and she, you need to get the meal out on time. And so I had to learn that, how to pay attention to her, and not be so involved with the meal that she was just sitting over there. Make her a cup of tea, talk with her, but also give directions, go over and do something, and a really valuable thing to learn to do. Okay. And so I learned in that stillness and activity and stillness. And that teaching became alive for me. Another kind of teaching in the kitchen. Reverend Master, for most of her life, did not have much money. She was a monk, so she just didn't have a lot of money when she came here. She had a little bit, and she liked to look at the schlock catalogs. If many of you are familiar with those, I think they're still out there. These catalogs of quite inexpensive gadgets. And sometimes they used to be advertised on TV and in TV Guide, but there was also catalogs of those. Some of the stuff was quite brilliant, but she would buy things from those catalogs for the kitchen, and I would get them and I would look at them and think, what is this? In retrospect, I was really arrogant. The way my mind was, I was like, what's the story here? This is like a big kitchen. This plastic thing will last about 10 minutes in here, or whatever. It was pretty arrogant. So, but I knew I needed to try it. Try whatever she, because it would have been really, really not very good. So I would try it, and then often I would relegate it to one of the drawers. So there might be some of those drawers full of those things still up there. I don't know. But it took me a while, and I think that I realized before she died, while I was still the cook, what she was actually doing. Okay, first off, she didn't have a lot of money. She couldn't buy some big commercial piece of machinery to give us. She just give us something simple. But more than that, what was going on, she was trying to point something out to me. She was trying to say, don't make it so complicated. There's a simpler way to do things. And I think I got that better after my latter years of cooking. Maybe I got a little bit of wisdom, not just energy, and could see that you don't have to make things so complicated. And I must say, since having, especially a monastic disciple, but also lay disciples, I can see how we complicate our lives, for various reasons, but we complicate our lives, and we don't have to do that. So here she was trying to really show me that way back then. But that's how we are. We don't learn often until we get faced with the exact same thing, and we usually get ourselves in spades, in terms of something to teach to someone. Okay. Right. Reverend Master Jiyu, because she was raised in her teenage years during the war, there's a real lack of food that would affect her health. And then she was to go to the Far East and eat a diet that, for most Westerners, it's just not the diet we're used to. And we have difficulties with it for a long period of time. For a short period of time we might be okay, but for a long period of time. She stayed there, 8-9 years. And as you know, she had diabetes. She also had very poor digestion, just terrible digestion, and eating was not an easy matter. I cooked for her quite often, and the ingredients you used, the proteins you were able to use, it was really a small scope of things. And occasionally you'd make a mistake with an ingredient, or you'd been cooking something in a wok before and didn't clean it properly and make something for her. And it caused her real digestive upset. And most of the time you'd hear about it, or you hear about it some of the time. Actually, it could have been happening all the time, and I just heard about it some of the time. But she would tell you about it some of the time. Okay? And I feel really bad about it. And I just learned in time that what I had to do is just learn from it. Not make the same mistake again. And do the best I can. One day, she came to lunch, and we were having tempeh. And she asked me what this is. And I said, it's tempeh, and I explained. She said, I'll try it. And I thought, oh, God, this is going to kill her. Because actually, with someone with poor health and you're cooking for them, you sometimes wonder, you're going to kill the person if you... But she ate the tempeh, and, she said, oh, that was interesting. She never ate tempeh again. But she didn't complain, So again, you could not pin her down, even with food, even with her limitations with food. She'd just try something every once in a while. Okay. She occasionally, after an incident in the kitchen, would say to me, I'm never coming to the kitchen again. That's a pretty strong statement. And, I was kind of like, whoa, And again, I just would, when I just got back to meditating and being quiet, I just realized, okay, what mistake did I make? And sometimes you couldn't find it. You just had to accept it, accept the situation. And it was gone, and just to learn from it, to accept it and learn from it. Basic Buddhism, but it's so important all throughout training. You never leave that place. Because that's what life presents you. Because with situations that you cannot control. And what are you going to do? Okay. There was a famous Thanksgiving meal that we had here. And I hope I'm not boring you by all my stories, but this is the best way for me to talk about her in her teaching. But we had this famous Thanksgiving meal where... I think it was Reverend Master, because I was up in the kitchen and others were down here, but she decided, or someone decided, that we were going to remodel the Founder's Shrine. And so for the next number of hours, there was a crew of monks remodeling the Founder's Shrine. Well, we were having Yorkshire pudding for the meal. And I would get these messages, we should be ready to eat in about a half hour. And these kept coming through the afternoon. So to the best of my recollection, and we all know how accurate memory is sometimes, but that Yorkshire pudding went in and out of the oven 7 times. And you do it really high heat, So it was like leather in the end. And then Reverend Master fell asleep, because it was probably an exhausting day for her, so the meal was, kind of really late. But finally we ate, and I'm thinking, this is really bad, Anyway, we had the meal, and she said, great meal, Daishin. I thought, okay. So that's the way it was. Okay. Okay. Reverend Master said about our practice as Buddhists that for most of us, initially our draw is because of one of the 3 treasures. It's, a teacher, the Buddha's teaching, Dharma, or maybe the Sangha, is our pull, or the thing that draws us in initially. But she also said that if you are to keep on with training, you have to take all 3 refuges. They have to become your treasures, your 3 treasures. You can't just have one. And she also said that the Sangha treasure in some ways would be the most difficult for us, because it's about getting along with other people. And isn't that one of our biggest things in life? We're a varied lot, human race. And at a Buddhist monastery, we're still a varied lot. So to get along is really important. And I think, in my estimation, that she did a lot to promote harmony in the Sangha, to promote people getting along. She really put an emphasis here on us being a family. Somebody interestingly said, I heard said years ago, that if you have a big family, there's always somebody having a problem. Well, it's kind of how it is, you know. So it's not an easy matter. But she was both, in some ways, very shy and private. In other ways, extremely public. I mean, she could really carry on a conversation. But she didn't enjoy being put in the place of the holy guru. She'd go down to these things in the Bay Area, which she called holy man jamborees. And you know, she did not want to be made into something holy. And you probably have been told she took out her false teeth sometimes when we were just... I don't know, maybe she needed to do that for some reason, but I think it just kind of made the point. She's just a human being. And she shared her life and her difficulties with her disciples. She didn't hide them. Okay. And that was in a really remarkable teaching, because, you know, life is not simple. And enlightenment, Buddhist training, isn't about the easy road. And we're going to feel all comfortable and nice, and it's just not always that way. I said this before. She was both tough and compassionate, because she had both of those sides. And I think she was skillful in the way that she taught in that way. Was she always right? Probably not. But I can say for myself that when I had a problem with her, when I really looked at it, the problem was my problem. Okay? It wasn't about that she was perfect, but the problem was my problem and the way that I was perceiving things. Okay? The place that I was coming from. Okay? She expected the best from people, and she expected the best from anybody who walked through the door here. So, you know, her teachings were, I think, you know, they're far more deep than I could ever give to people. And she was very open-hearted in giving those, because she saw the potential in people. She saw their Buddha nature. Right. I think that she had great respect for lay training. In some Buddhist traditions, you take the precepts, you come to a temple and take the precepts for the day. You know, hopefully you carry them out with you, but that's kind of how the emphasis is. Or sometimes you don't take a precept because you feel you can't keep it. Well, with lay training and the precepts, she said, no, all the precepts. People can keep all the precepts. You know, we might not keep them perfectly, but we can keep all the precepts and keep it in the way that we should according to our lives. When I reflect on her place in Buddhist history, I realize what a daunting task she was faced with. Okay? She was a Westerner, and she was a woman. I think it's hard enough for a Westerner to bring Buddhism from the East to the West. And I think, you know, this, at least at the time she came, the women did not have full rights by any means in this country. And, you know, people gave her difficulties because she was a woman. So I think it's remarkable. And also when you put on top of that this person was ill, and the volume of things that she left us, just amazing. Okay. So I will say that my experience of Reverend Master was my experience. I can't say that it was anybody else's. You know, it was my experience of her. So that's what I'm giving you, my experience of her. Somebody else might have another experience. She put tremendous effort into trying to help me. I think it took her a while to kind of get used to me, and vice versa. But she put tremendous care in trying to help me. She treated me as an individual. She saw my strengths and tried to bring those out. She challenged my weaknesses. I didn't always arise to the occasion. So that, we don't. That's the way it is for people in life. I remember one time I was down in Berkeley with her. I was helping her, and there were just a few of us there. Everybody else went. Okay, I was there with her. I can't read. At that point in my life, my confidence in reading was quite low still. But we're watching TV. She can't see. I can't read. She can't see. We're watching this some historical piece about Germany, okay, and or maybe it was a movie. I don't know. But there were subtitles. Okay, subtitles. So she asked me to read the subtitles to her. And that was a challenge. And also, there were these things in German, and forget it, because my brain, as soon as the letters aren't, constructed properly, I'm gone. I have no idea how you pronounce something. So I just had to finally tell her, Master, I can't read well. But she kept having me read. And it was painful, and I didn't do a very good job of it. But she didn't hold it against me. I don't think she had me read again. And actually it came back to the Abbey. I couldn't quite take the pressure of being with her. I had an old dog to take care of, so I opted to come back to take care of the old dog. I didn't rise to the occasion. And it wasn't about the reading, I just couldn't at that point let go of something and or take it with humor that I couldn't read. So that was okay. She didn't come, when she came back from Berkeley, she wasn't on my case about reading or anything. It's just like normal. And I was grateful for that. Okay, I would say that, and this is from my experience and who I am and where I am today, that I really, I'm glad that I had her as a teacher. It changed my life for the better. As a teacher now, I can see a lot more her intention, in things that I didn't understand. I can see her wisdom a lot more. And I can see why she did things the way she did a lot of the time. But I don't try to copy her. I think, if I did, she'd give me a good kick in the rear from wherever she is, because she didn't want people to copy her. She wanted people to train and be who they were. And I'm not her, So I learn from her still, and I try to do things as best I can. Okay, the night before she died, I almost died. Okay, not really. The night before she died, she was in and out of a kind of a semi-coma. Okay, I was over in her house with her. And actually I was slated the next day, and I did have this happen, the next day, the day she died, to go in early to the Mount Shasta Hospital for a double hernia operation. So at one point that night, she came out of her kind of sleep, and she turned to me and she said, "When's the operation?" I said, "Oh, it's tomorrow at such and such." She says, "I hope it goes well." And then she went back, to kind of a sleep. And the interesting thing is that she didn't, die until I got out of the operation, and she knew I was okay. So, who knows, But so I talked for a long time, and that's all I'm going to talk. But that's my experience of her and the teaching she gave.